What's going on, team? Killchain here, and what does an ultimate comprehensive guide for a warrior in Dragonflight Prepatch look like? Let's find out. We're going to cover specs, we're going to cover covenants, we're going to cover conduits, and we're going to cover all three specializations, including the protection warrior. So let's get it. So to kick it off with Fury, highlighted in green, these are going to be your mandatory talents regardless of which particular build you're running. Now, we actually have a lot of variation as a Fury warrior, whether we're running a single target raid orientated build or a AOE Mythic Plus orientated build. Then you have the choice between a Raging Blow or Annihilator, and then finally the choice between using two-handers with a Titan's Grip build or the Black Horse of single-minded Fury that no one really talks about. Now, the discussion of single-minded Fury is not really worth having at all, more so to do within Dragonflight at max level. However, in pre-patch with Gavel and Jathus, they're just too powerful of a weapons. There's no reason ever to look at single-minded Fury, so we are not looking at single-minded in any capacity for this video. Now, like I said, highlighted in green, these are going to be your typical pickups. You can feel free to peruse over. We're always getting Avatar, Odin's Fury's back, baby, from Legion. It's going to be awesome. And other than that, yeah, you can see sort of the pretty typical pattern of what abilities we're picking up. A couple of things to note though, really important as well, is Rallying Cry. Obviously the not capstone, the choice node beneath Rallying Cry, the Inspiring Presence, whenever that conflicts with the Shadowland system, any talents, they will always, one, not stack together, and two, they will always prioritize the talent variation. So in this case, for example, and there's probably other cases across different classes, the Inspiring Presence from the talent only gives you 5% extra health on Rallying Cry. However, the Conduit gives you an extra 35 or 40%. It's something ridiculous like that. So just by taking this talent, you immediately gimp yourself. Definitely do not pick it up. No one really runs it in Dragonflight at max level on the beta at the moment anyway, but especially so in the pre-patch, don't want to be picking that up regardless. So now what I want to do is float up the blue highlights. Now this is going to refer to your flex talents that can chop and change based on your build. So on the class side of things, you can see we pick up Intervene if you want and need that. Spell Reflection, really handy for your magic damage reduction. Crushing Force is only ever taken in an Annihilator build for their slam damage, otherwise Pain and Gain and Hone Reflexes for more Raging Blow stuff. Bitter Immunity if you need the defensive. All your Mythic Plus talents over on the right hand side for Stormbolt if you need CC. Sidearm, Barbaric Training and Seismic Reverberation. These are more AOE centric abilities. And then Wild Strikes, they're really powerful because it gives you auto attack speed, which helps rage generation and helps doubly so in an Annihilator build where you're getting extra damage from auto attacks. As for the specialization side, the entire blue highlights on the left-hand column, these all refer to the Annihilator bleed build, essentially, where you're doing a lot more Bloodthirst and slams, no Raging Blow at all because it gets cancelled out by Annihilator. And so, yeah, you heavily rely on those bleeds, especially through Cold Steel Hot Blood. And this is the build in particular for an AOE spec that is popping out the best in a Mythic Plus environment at the moment. The spreading of Cold Steel Hot Blood through the improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver with Bloodthirst spamming are really powerful. So you're getting your Cold Steel Hot Blood bleed on literally everything. Really powerful, really strong. Central column, you're always going to run War Paint. It is never really a scenario you don't, unless if you have bad uptime on Enrage. If you're struggling to keep Enrage uptime somewhat decent, sort of 70% or above, then Invigorating Fury might be worth at least having a look at, because War Paint really loses a lot of value if you don't get to keep Enrage uptime pretty decent. Hack and Slash, Enrage, improved Raging Blow, Wrath and Fury and Raging Armaments. Obviously more Raging Blow focused. Improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver anytime you need AOE. They're your two standard pickups there. And then the central column through Anger Management or Reckless Abandon, this is your single target orientated sort of pickups there. So let's jump in game and actually have a look at what the emerging builds look like, and we'll have a look at some rotation and macros and stuff like that as well. So now that we're in game, the first build we'll check out is the Raging Blow single target build. As you can see, it will be up on screen, as well as a import link will be available down in the description below, so you can import it straight into your warrior on retail now that the servers are up. Yay! Now, important thing to note, this has no AOE to speak of whatsoever. If you do need some sort of cleaving capabilities on this build, pull out 2 points from Focusing Chaos and Improved Bloodthirst and chuck them into Improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver. Cool, makes sense. Now, in terms of the next build, this is not as strong in a single target as the Raging Blow build. Raging Blow very much is our best option for single target at the moment. This is the Annihilator based single target build. Same concept. If you don't need the AOE, you'll be popping the 2 points into Vicious Contempt instead. But if you do need AOE, then by all means you can pull those 2 points out and at least get your Meat Cleaver as normal. And the reason this doesn't perform as well is I don't know, it just doesn't perform as well, right? There's a lot of downtime you tend to notice, whereas Raging Blow, on rare occasion, you'll have to Bloodthirst if you don't get certain lucky procs or things like that. It's super noticeable the moment your cooldowns wear off. The Annihilator base build, even though your Bloodthirst rolls down to a 2.2 second cooldown, you're Bloodthirsting and then something else. The something else is hard to pull off because Whirlwind has its own cooldown now from Storm of Swords, and Slam obviously has its own cooldown from Storm of Swords as well. And so you do Bloodthirst and then the and typically once you've done the you're not sitting there. So a lot of dead time waiting for the next Bloodthirst to come available, and yeah, just doesn't push out as much single target damage, unfortunately. Next build we'll have a look at is if you want to play Raging Blow but in a Mythic Plus AOE based environment. Not the best AOE build that we have, unfortunately, but again, if you particularly enjoy this build, then this is available to you. Still strong, powerful AOE through your cooldowns, but outside of that, yeah, it falls off to the Annihilator Mythic Plus AOE build, which we'll show in a second as well. Key notable things here is Titanic Rage. It does the exact same as Reckless Abandon, where it turns your Raging Blow into Crushing Blow. We get that twice because, again, we proc a second Odin's Fury from our avatar. So both times it will turn your Crushing Blow to do big damn. So for that reason, you don't need to run Reckless Abandon. Otherwise, they sort of double up on each other. As you can imagine, hitting Recklessness to pop Reckless Abandon while also macroed with Avatar to pop Odin's Fury, which props Titanic Rage as well, you're doing the exact same thing twice for no reason. And then that encourages you to Recklessness and Avatar separately to not double dip on the two procs that you get. And then that also sort of just leads to annoyance. So it's doable, but it still doesn't perform as best as Annihilator AOE, which is our fourth and final build we're going to show here real quick. Again, reminder, all links will be down in the description so you can import it straight in. This bad boy is the Fils de la Resistance. This is your best Mythic Plus build for sure. Now, the reason why is being able to Meat Cleaver out and cleave all your Cold Steel Hot Blood bleeds through Bloodthirst. Really powerful. Gets those bleed rolling. If any Mythic Plus environments where, I'm guessing probably as you start hitting 10s to 15s and above, where mobs are lasting a lot longer, or even on fortified weeks, for example, it really does make a big difference being able to have a lot of uptime on the mobs, so that way your bleeds can really take effect and start pumping some big damage, while still doing respectable upfront damage through your cooldowns as well. So this will be definitely the build to go for Mythic Plus. Now, while we're on that topic, we obviously have what Covenant we are. Who would have thought? We're Kyrian again. Yay, not a surprise, even remotely. So, in terms of the conduits though, there are some significant changes to note because, again, Shadowland system conflicts with talent. So if you're picking the talent because you need to, or whatever the case is, pathing issues, blah, 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 it means certain conduits and things will pull out because we don't need them anymore. Most notably, things like Hack and Slash. We have the Hack and Slash talent. Anytime we're running Raging Blow, we pick up the talent. So it is pointless running that conduit because it's just going to conflict with each other. So for that reason, this will be our Mythic Plus Annihilator M plus AOE sort of build, right? So we're running down, we still run Mechanicos. The Hammer of Genesis is just like too powerful in all scenarios, basically. But the couple of pickups that were quite powerful, things like Merciless Bone Grinder used to be a core part of our rotation. Now it doesn't exist anymore because, again, one, it's a talent in arms. You don't even get it as Fury anymore, so little things like that need to be. Insanity is a talent, but we don't pick it up, so it's fine. We're able to run the Conduit, getting Adaptive Armor instead, and Stalwart Guardian, so you can see your pathing there. Now, if we are running our Raging Blow single target build, we're going to run Clayer. So again, not always like typical. I think in a raid environment, most people probably enjoy and want to run arms with the new Condemn, which we'll have a look at when we jump into the arm stuff. But if you're doing Fury and your single target Clayer is the way to go here. Again, Raging Blow orientated, so although it seems obvious we would pick Hack and Slash, don't pick it. It's already a talent. It'll conflict with it anyway. Depths of Insanity, pushing down into the right-hand path for Inspiring Presence. Condensed Anima Sphere, Stalwart Guardian, and then Adaptive Armor Fragment as usual, and Indelible Victory. Kind of the exact same, it's just a matter of the pathing. And you swap between these two based on single target for Clayer or AoE for Mechanicos. So that is our conduit builds. Last, let's have a quick check of the actual rotation itself. So here we are on our single target build, and yeah, you can see Raging Blow single target. We aren't going to pick up the improved whirlwind or anything like that. It's strictly just showcasing the cooldowns, macros, and what rotation is going to run. It's actually really simple and easy, so not too much to figure out there. Now, because in this single target build we're running Reckless Abandon and not Anger Management, the cooldowns line up perfectly. We have our macro that will apply both Recklessness and Avatar at the same time. So that's this one here. You can see Show Tooltip Recklessness, and you cast both of the cooldowns. I also have it with my Trinket, which will help proc the Scars of Fraternal Strife. And then I also have that particular Trinket macroed again on my Rampage. So this bad boy here also uses Scar strictly because we want to be using it every 30 seconds. And it's a healer's job to keep us up, right? So it'll be fun. Now, in terms of our opener, when we charge in, we want to pop our cooldowns. That'll also proc an Odin's Fury. You do want to proc your actual normal Odin's Fury quite soon because we want it to still be lining up its cooldowns with each and every Avatar and Recklessness we get, but we want to make sure the original Odin's Fury from Avatar is already left and finished its dot before hitting it again, and still maintaining it during our Avatar and Recklessness window for the increased crit chance and damage, but not before you double dip on the bleed that it provides for 6 seconds. And then outside of that, the typical rotation is literally execute anytime, you know, sudden death procs or anything like that, and then it's just Raging Blow and Rampage, baby. Nice and easy. So we'll charge in, obviously can pop that. I'm still running my wrong legendary. That's another thing I'll touch on is legendaries in a sec. Bleeds run out, so we can hit our Odin's Fury, and that's all you're doing. You're just literally pumping that. During your burst window, you actually typically won't see that many high Slaughtering Strike stacks because you're just getting too much rage to be able to stack up Slaughtering Strikes too high. But then once all the stuff falls off, you'll tend to notice it starts to calm down a little bit. So our burst window is really powerful. As you can see here, we peak at around 28k-ish, I think. And then, yeah, you sit around 20k plus. And then as things fall off, obviously we dip down a little bit lower than that. So, and keep in mind, that's not really using Gavel or anything like that yet. We're just doing our basic kind of rotation to get an idea for it. Now, next up, I want to show the AoE rotation for Annihilator with Mythic Plus. So let's swap over to that bad boy once I get out of combat. If I want to get out of combat. There we go. Good combat. There. Now, we'll go over to our little AoE pile over here that I'm pretty sure I saw. Yep, just here. So, now in this little opener, we are running Spear of Bastion. We could have speared on our single target rotation as well, so obviously keep that in mind. But Spear of Bastion into, again, the same AoE wombo combo, but this time we just want to focus on maintaining our whirlwind buff. This particular Luxthos's weak aura is really powerful because the beautiful... I haven't changed my build yet, have I? There we go. Let me change that over. The absolutely amazing whirlwind buffs here, these little 4 brackets, they're a light blue, which makes it really good for peripheral vision. So definitely well worth checking that out. Hashtag not sponsored, by the way, but no, his weak auras are always amazing. So apart from that, the AoE rotation for this particular one is obviously, I'm actually going to throw Spear on this time because I didn't have that on my single target. Hashtag prepared, right? Spear of Bastion, obviously that'll open up into a big wombo combo. Then outside of that, just Whirlwind to keep that buff up, and then just spam your Bloodthirst and Slams, and then Rampage whenever you can. There's more balls to juggle, so to speak. Like I said, it's not just as simple as Raging Blow, but the core component is spreading out your Bloodthirst bleed every time you can. So we go in, we'll charge that, and then we'll pop that bad boy, AoE, and then we just, yeah, free dinner, basically. It's ridiculous. Look at this AoE damage. I'm doing like 80k. Like, what the fuck is this shit? It's insane. Very fun, very powerful. Also one of the best AOE builds in Dragonflight at max level as well. So there we have it. Nice big bursty AOE. Very girthy, very fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to taking this into Mythic Plus, I'll be honest. It's going to be fucking sick. One final thing for our Fury is obviously touching on the legendaries. We'll always be running Unity, which will fluctuate based on what Covenant we're running. Very useful and obviously necessary for the rest of Shadowlands. However, our Signet of Tormented Kings, this beautiful thing, gone to the wayside. Obviously, we don't have Blade Storms, that doesn't proc, and it completely conflicts with the picking up Avatar and whatever choice node beneath it you have. Completely balked. Now we want to be running Deathmaker. So now on to arms, again highlighted in green. These are going to be the mandatory pickups regardless of which build we're running. You'll notice that Crushing Force is always taken now, as the Slam is an integral part of your rotation as arms outside of execute phase. We get Avatar as always. Avatar is amazing. Wild Strikes is always picked up because the extra attack speed really helpful for rage generation and everything like that. Blood Surge is the key to decent rage gen here as well. We get Rend, we're going straight down and picking up the obvious must-have talents for arms, so specifically Colossus Smash, for example, Anger Management, very powerful, and the two choice nodes that branch out of that, and picking up all the execute stuff and Impale on the right. So now let's throw up the highlighted in blue little flex talents. Again, Intervene, Spell Reflection, Thunderclap and Blood Surge, very powerful, but obviously, sorry, not Blood Surge, Blood and Thunder. Very powerful, but obviously not needed in a single target orientated build. Pain and Gain, Bitter Immunity. Again, Pain and Gain will be simply there for pathing and point acquisition, just to allow you to get to the next tier if and when you need it. Overwhelming Rage, same concept, picking up whenever you need it for the points. Seismic Reverb and Sidearm, really good for AoE, but obviously not as great for anything outside of that. Onto the specialization side of things, again, it all sort of makes sense. If you're going Sweeping Strikes and Storm of Swords or Collateral Damage, it means you're doing AoE along with Cleave and Reaping Swings. However, all the single target orientated stuff is on the left hand side of that right hand column, if that makes sense. With your Massacre, Improved Mortal Strike, Critical Thinking, Sharpened Blades, and Juggernaut, obviously centered around that execute single target playstyle, while going down the guts into the Blade Storm and Merciless Bone Grinder and everything. That is your AoE orientated stuff. So for arms, let's have a look. The first build we want to touch on is the Juggernaut-centric single target raid build. Now, the whole damage profile of this particular build is centered around execute. For that reason, all the talents will obviously be leaning towards trying to get that. Unfortunately, we don't quite have enough to pull off Fatality. However, at Dragonflight max level, yes, Fatality is involved in that as well. And honestly, this build is a lot of fun. A really good fun single target build. Now, you'll notice that there's no AoE to speak of whatsoever. However, you do have the option of pulling out 2 points, one from Deft Experience and one from Improved Overpower, to get either Cleave and Reaping Swings, or perhaps Sweeping Strikes and Collateral Damage if you had a 2-person cleave that you needed. And all you're literally doing is just pulling out those 2 points. Nothing else changes in terms of pathing or anything like that. And you still get very strong single target capabilities, because the Deft Experience and Improved Overpower aren't really like super important talents. They're not even needed for pathing or anything like that. It's just where else are you going to put them? Well, in this case, when you do need at least some AoE, you've got that option of flexing them out and then picking those two up. So with that in mind, these are obviously the build, linked down in the description to allow you to import. I'm obviously Venthyr, so we're getting Condemn out of that, because that'll obviously allow us to have a higher damage profile and execute in the top 20% range of the health pool, as well as the final 35 from Massacre. As for the Soulbind, Naja, I mean, it's pretty stock standard, anything crit related, Najas you go to, and this obviously we want our big execute crits or big condemn crits. Now, a couple of conduits will end up chopping and changing around because we are focused on execute damage here. Most notably, Harrowing Punishment comes in. Everything else is pretty similar. You'll see the Inspiring Presence, that's why we don't run the talent. Starwalk Guardian, we do have Safeguard. There's really no other option here, honestly. So Safeguard is sort of the best option, and that's where I'd flex out Pain and Gain into Intervene for that reason. Picking up Mortal Combo and Condense Animosphere. Outside of that, I mean, there's nothing else I would honestly really run. Yeah, there's no other option you're really going to go towards. You can't get Ashen Juggernaut because you have the talented version of normal Juggernaut, so they will conflict with each other. This is your best bet. The one thing I did want to touch on is the Wowhead guide specifically still runs Fueled by Violence. They clash. I don't believe it stacks at all, and the talent gives you 50% healing, whereas this only gives you 15% healing. So I'm not sure why. Maybe it does stack and I'm just not aware of it, but rule of thumb is they don't stack, and I'm pretty sure from when I threw it on, it was a bit hard to judge, like how am I supposed to tell an extra 15% healing here or there. But as far as I'm aware, it doesn't stack, so definitely don't throw that conduit in. As for the rotation itself, very easy. Inside of execute phase, you're just literally maintaining bleeds and then spam the shit out of condemn. It's fucking insane. It's so much fun. And then outside of that, your rotation, so ignoring condemn if you're in that particular phase. Same as usual, right? You're maintaining your bleeds as best you can. Use your overpower to buff your mortal strike damage, and then sudden death procs. Yeah, throw them in there whenever you can as well. And if you ever have excess rage, you've got slam to help, yeah, do some extra damage there. So that's your rotation. While you're inside the damage profile window for the execute range though, you will essentially be spamming the shit out of that while maintaining your bleeds. So what that'll look like is we'll get our bleeds up just for deep wounds and the other one, and then pop our avatar, go into Loss or Smash and make sure we're doing the extra bonus damage there. And then as you can see, we literally just spam the shit out of that. We'll throw in a rend and keep our bleeds up whenever we need to. But outside of that, it really is that simple. We're just blasting the shit out of some execute and watching the big dam come in. What can I say? Very powerful, very strong, and honestly really fun. It's nice to actually have a build where we see a lot of high damage, like just big crits. I miss that a lot, honestly. It's nice to see some just big girthy crits again. So now over on the AOE Mythic Plus variant of this particular build, you'll notice that everything is focused on more AOE situations, including Mythic Plus typical pickups like your Stormbot, for example, for crowd control. We do go into Thunderclap and Blood and Thunder to allow for our Rend to be AOE spread easily, and everything else is centered around much more AOE focus. The big ticket play in terms of your burst window is going to be revolved around getting 2 rounds of Blade Storm through Avatar and Blade Master's Torment, as well as just normal Blade Storm. This is then buffing your Hurricane, which allows you to gain strength while doing the Blade Storm. Then at the end of all that, you use your Merciless Bone Grinder to pop off a massive Whirlwind, because that is accentuated by Storm of Swords, picking up the extra rage cost and cooldown, but increasing your Whirlwind damage by 175%, which is absolutely insane. And that's further exacerbated by your Barbaric Training, which gives you an extra 30% and a double hit when you hit more than 3 targets. So really, really powerful AoE in that regard. And the whole build centers around that whole AoE cycle of whenever your cooldowns are up, they're the big wombo combo that you want to be going for. And yeah, it really makes it honestly a lot of fun. Now, as for the Kyrian, we're obviously back on Kyrian for our Covenant. The Soulbind Mechanicos is literally the only go-to in any sort of AoE sort of environment. The pathing actually doesn't change from the Fury build you'll notice of before, but a few key talents, conduits, that we need to swap in and out. Crash and Ramparts will take its way in. Mortal Combo as well will be the 2 that you pick in because they're more arms orientated. Obviously, there's no point running conduits out of for Fury. It doesn't need to be said, obviously. Same deal though, Wowhead still has Fueled by Violence talented in, as well as the conduit. Really weird, I'm not sure why. I'm going to actually do a bit of investigation in a little bit before I post the video, and if it's still in, then it means my investigation was fun, but it's totally fun. Yeah, don't run that. I think that's a bit of a silly pickup. Instead, Indelible Victory will be fine. Now, as for what the rotation will look like, I mean, your standard AoE is going to be pretty typical. You have Sweeping Strikes available to you. Spam a lot of Cleave. Cleave will hit everything, and it does pretty decent damage. Short cooldown as well, and that further gets buffed by your Overpower. Allows you to deep runes the shit out of everything. So yeah, really powerful. Cleave is definitely your standard rotation, but most importantly, your wombo combo, so to speak, is all about revolving around a really high Whirlwind at the end of Blade Storms. It's So what that big whirlwind actual opening rotation and big burst cooldown is going to look like is we're essentially going to charge in, we apply our 2 bleeds, namely Rend and Deep Runes through Thunderclap and Cleave. Once that's done, then we can do our wombo combo, so to speak, of Spirit Bastion, Warbreaker, Avatar. That'll proc our first Blade Storm. Coming out of that first Blade Storm, we will be then hitting Whirlwind. Whirlwind will then go into reapplying our bleeds and our second Blade Storm. Once that ends, usually there's 2 GCDs before Whirlwind will be up again, in which case you can then overpower and cleave into the second Whirlwind. As soon as that second Whirlwind's done, go straight back into Thunderclap to reapply the Rend so it doesn't fall off. What that's actually going to look like, let's give it a shot. I've done this a whole bunch of times. I definitely recommend practicing it as it will take a bit of time to get used to. So let's get these ones done. There we go. Spear, Warbreaker, Avatar. Into this bad boy. Boom. And then boom and boom. And then second Blade Storm. There was a bit of rage gap in that particular one there. That, and then there we go. So 62k is what we picked up. That was pretty good. I'm happy with that. Last but not least, we have the Protection Warrior. Green highlights for the mandatory talents. You'll see both stances, Impending Victory and Rallying Cry as usual. The War Machine Pyramid, as I like to call it, from War Machine down into Fast Footwork, Frothing Berserker, Heroic Leap, Spell Reflection, Thunderclap, Leeching Strikes and Furious Blows. Thunderclap is always gotten in every scenario due to the fact that even in single target, one, it forms such a core part of your typical Prot Warrior rotation, but in conjunction with Rend and Blood and Thunder, it means that instead of Rend costing you 30 rage, Thunderclap will help generate 5 rage and actually still apply Rend for free, so even in single target, well worth picking up there. Blood and Thunder then allows us to path down into double time and one-handed weapon spec. The Furious Blows on the right gives us sidearm, barbaric training and endurance training. And lastly, Frothing Berserker on the left through Crushing Force gives us the straight run down the guts, just like arms, where we get Avatar and the choice node below that. Specialization side of the tree, Ignore Pain, Revenge, Devastator, and Strategist. Strategist being the key talent specifically to allow for the Shield Slam resets. On the left-hand side, we have Demoralizing Shout, Best Served Cold, Challenging Shout, Show of Force, and Sudden Death choice node, as well as Heavy Repercussions and Into the Fray choice node. Now, below Strategist, we have Rend, which while we never use Rend, we obviously still need to pick it up for Blood and Thunder and Thunderclap. Blood Surge, huge part of why our rage generation feels very strong. It only works with Rend and Deep Runes at the moment, but as we level up through Dragonflight, eventually when we hit level 70, we'll be allowed to pick up our Thunderous Roar as well, which is another bleed that helps generate rage for us as well. Below that, Shield Wall, all 3 branches out of Shield Wall, picking up the 2 choice nodes as well as Anger Management. Shield spec below that, Indomitable and Violent Outburst, which was our tier for Season 4, but the tier set has now been deactivated in Prepatch, Sag, but we get Violent Outburst for that. On the right-hand side, Last Stand, Brace for Impact, Fueled by Violence and Tough as Nails with those 2 choice nodes there. And let's throw up the lovely blue highlights for the flex talents. Intervene. Now this is going to form more of that Shadowland systems clash. If you're running the Reprisal legendary still, definitely want to get Intervene in all scenarios. But if you're not running it and in a single target, like you're running the wall instead, you may not necessarily need it in a raid environment or anything like that. But if you are running Reprisal as your legendary still, definitely want Intervene. Stormbolt for Mythic Plus, Seismic Reverb again. If you're doing AOE, you want that second proc on Revenge, by all means, that's something you definitely want to pick up. Then if you need the point expenditure just to allow you to get to the below tiers, you've got Pain and Gain and Bounding Stride to help you there. As for the specialization side, Thunderlord always picked up when it's a Mythic Plus or AOE based build, but outside of that, you will not need to get this bad boy. Show of Force and Heavy Repercussions for Mythic Plus, and then Sudden Death or Into the Fray choice nodes specifically for a single target orientated build. Booming Voice, another one that's strictly only for Mythic Plus. Outside of that, you shouldn't tend to really need it, honestly. Below Tough as Nails, we also have Punish if you are running single target with Ravager. Below that, Ravager does not need Enduring Alacrity to obviously path on Punisher, as you'll get it straight from Shield Specialization anyway. You have the points to spend, so you're best off picking up Ravager for single target to help with rage generation and things like that there. So they are the builds. We'll jump in game as always so you can see them in the flesh, and the Prot, Prot talent links will be down in the description as always. So for a Prot Warrior, starting off with the Mythic Plus build, you will see a lot of the typical variations, but the real strength and power is that it comes down to, one, our legendaries still have an effect. So in Shadowlands for the rest of pre-patch until Dragonflight actually launches, we have things like our legendary Reprisal, which means Intervene definitely comes well worth picking up. And it also means that we don't need to worry about Shield Charge or Champion's Bulwark, as that is the Dragonflight version of Reprisal. And as such, we actually don't run any of that in any of the prop builds. So Reprisal definitely holds on as being a very strong candidate for a legendary that we're still going to run. The other one being the Wall. And if you are running the Wall, like I mentioned earlier, where the talents and the old Shadowlands systems do conflict, it will cancel each other out and will always pick and operate under the talent assumption rather than the Shadowlands system. So for that reason, if you are running the Wall legendary, you don't want to spec into Impenetrable Wall, as they will cancel each other out. So you have the option of running the Unbreakable Will instead. Shield Wall gets an extra charge and most importantly grants 50% of its effect to party members. Really powerful, 20% damage reduction on demand basically. Very powerful whenever you need it in an AoE environment. Unstoppable Force, this will turn your avatar DPS rotation into Thunderclap Revenge spam, alternating between the two. Combine that with Show of Force, Revenge then buffs your Thunderclap. So therefore you can go Thunderclap Revenge, you get the idea. Really powerful AoE cooldown there. We also have a movable object. This will give yet another shield wall proc through avatar, so that helps out if you're speccing into Unbreakable Will. That's a lot of shield wall uptime and a lot of damage reduction for your party members. Into the fray, I mean, more haste is always handy, right? It means more rage generation, more devastator procs, more strategist shield slam resets. You get the idea. However, heavy repercussions, again, another solid talent choice where shield slam will give you more rage, but more importantly, will extend shield block duration. Combine that with another choice node in Tough as Nails. If you have spell issues with a particular encounter, you need to block some spells, then hey, you've got that option of swapping out a Tough as Nails into spell block for the brief duration that you need. The Brutal Vitality, honestly, you don't ever want to pick up Fueled by Violence. The healing throughput is just really not worth it, where you get much more bang for your buck for Brutal Vitality. This particular one won't ever change. So as for the rotation itself, it's more proc based. I mean, you want to make sure you prioritize spending your rage on defensive cooldowns. So specifically maintaining, let's actually target the dude. Specifically maintaining your shield block, getting as much uptime through Reprisal and things like that. But also your Ignore Pain is something that cannot be ignored, excuse the pun. And then only be dropping it on Revenge 1 during your avatar uptime. So if I pop avatar now, we definitely want to be going Revenge. Revenge, Thunderclap, Revenge, Thunderclap, Revenge, Thunderclap. Hopefully you won't ever run into rage issues like I just totally did. But yeah, you get the idea. You just want to be pummeling those two because they'll help boost each other up. And then in your typical rotation, just make sure you're being smart with your rage expenditure. The main thing is you don't want to be revenging to do more throughput when you end up going, oh shit, I should have popped shield block or Ignore Pain, and then you end up dying or getting too low because of it. So just things to keep in mind, especially if you're going into Prot as someone like myself, where you were typically a damage dealer and now you're just trying out something different and it's a little spicy. Just be a bit more defensive to begin with. For our single target orientated raid build, you will see more personal throughput and personal selfish talent choices. Things like your sudden death will obviously be significantly better in terms of single target. However, Show of Force does better in AoE. So more often than not, even if there is an AoE phase where ads might be up, you get way more bang for your buck for picking up a sudden death in a raid boss environment. Things like Ravager as well helps pick up ads if they spawn that you need to like pull in. Even personal throughput on a single target environment, 1 point to pick up Ravager is very handy. It allows you to do your rotation while Ravager ticks away and helps generate some rage there as well. And even things like picking up Punish obviously helps reduce damage from the raid boss himself by even further amount. If you wanted to go a bit more selfish even further, you've got Juggernaut, which helps even more smash out some absolute bangers of a prop pass. I can imagine there will be a world where someone somewhere will be on farm content and rank 1 passing Prot by picking up Juggernaut and Massacre and Sudden Death and really just pummeling the shit out of a single target boss encounter for sure. But as for the rotation, there really isn't too much change here. I mean, Avatar as always, you'll still Thunderclap Revenge spam. Revenge spam isn't really as necessary. You will still be Thunderclapping every second ability, so Thunderclap Shield Slam instead. Ravager is a nice pickup, just help in terms of actual damage whenever you pop both of them together, so very nice. And then the only thing that changes in terms of your actual rotation is the fact that we have to factor in Sudden Death procs with our Execute, but beyond that everything else is pretty much the same. The Shield Slam and Thunderclap on cooldown, Sudden Death procs whenever they happen to pop up, and then use your rage smartly. Obviously prioritize defensive stuff whenever you need to, otherwise you can pump into Revenge and Execute spams whenever they happen to be relevant when you're in Execute range. So there you have it. And that is a wrap on the absolute insanity. That is the comprehensive guide for a warrior heading into pre-patch. Hopefully you guys learned a thing or two, and if you made it this far in the video, thank you guys so much. If you smash a like or a subscribe, it helps me out a lot, and yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Yeah.